and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. We're going over some of my favorite time-saving strategies for meal prep, especially if you are in weight loss mode. I will say that these strategies do also work if you are just maintaining, if you are trying to keep your weight about the same. It depends on what you're making, and that's what we're going to get into today a little bit. I'm Coach Jen. I know that a lot of you in this group interact with me all the time, so I feel a little bit silly introducing myself, but if you're new, welcome. And as we're getting into some of these things, just know that meal prep is really as easy or as complicated as you make it. I will have a link below this video after we finish where you can get your own meal prep checklist, and I'm going to show you what my checklist looks like, how I use it, and what I do to save a ton of time on THM and just for healthy eating in general. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways to meal prep, and I have put together this big guide with recipes and a checklist and all kinds of stuff for you to make it easier for you to prep and stay on plan. There are different sections to this list, which is why I'm flipping through real quick. So we have the to-do checklist here. It's page 4 of the checklist. And just before that, on page 3, if you haven't downloaded it yet, again, I'll post a link for you to download it after we're done chatting here. There are 3 different main ways to meal prep, and these are the ones that I do. You could spend a few hours on the weekend planning, preparing, and storing your meals for the coming week. You could spread your meal prep out across the week so it becomes a continual process. This is another favorite. Or you can prep your meal components. And that's what I do, kind of a hybrid combo of the last 2 mostly. So there are times when I know that we will need to have some quick and easy dinners, some quick and easy meals. So I will do a meal prep session on like a Saturday or a Sunday. Now, if I do that, I have a session for you that I can actually post in the description of this video when we're done too, that has a link. I've spelled it all out for you, exactly what steps to take to get like 15 meals in 90 minutes completely done and into your freezer. That's one way to do it. And I do see people on Instagram all the time who have these amazing arrays of containers and different meals prepped, and that's fantastic. I don't have time to do that, and I have a lot of people to prep for. So if I had individual servings in different containers, my refrigerator would be more than full because we have, we've got the 6 kids, one's out of the house already, but home sometimes to visit. And then my husband's grandmother lives with us, and my husband and I, with all those people, it would just be impractical. Also, the time is really the biggest constraint I have for that. So I've never been much of a freezer cooking kind of person. So instead of that, one thing that I like to do is spread it out throughout the week and do components. So I will do and I'll share with you how I do fill my freezer with completed meals without doing those giant sessions too. So the components spread out throughout the week, what that looks like is that maybe on Monday when I'm cooking taco meat, I might just put in an extra batch of taco meat and freeze just the meat for a future dinner. I have lots of that in my freezer already. Or on Tuesday, when I'm making a casserole, I might say, okay, I can put a pot of quinoa on the stove right now. It takes 15 minutes, and that quinoa is going to be cooled. I always portion it out into 3/4 cup serving size because that's the portion size that THM has given us for quinoa in an E. I will go ahead and portion that out and have it in little baggies so it thaws super quickly. That way I can have that for lunches later, or I can combine a few of those baggies for a dinner, something like that. But the quinoa is unrelated to the casserole I'm making. It's just a component that I can use in the future. My idea there is that I'm already in the kitchen making a mess, already putting the effort in, already on my feet, already watching things on the stovetop. I might as well do a separate unrelated item that I can use to make putting meals together easier in the future. I also like to, for components like that, the things that I like to make really easily are things like brown rice, hard-boiled eggs, things like that. Do one single ingredient, but I spread it out. I don't go in the kitchen and do all of these at once. I'll just do one every night while I'm making dinner. I also spend a little bit of time every weekend making a bigger breakfast. And I actually haven't done this for a few weeks because I have plenty in my freezer, so much that I need to work through. But I like to, every Saturday, I make an E-friendly breakfast, like the giant blueberry baked pancake from Trim Healthy Mama. And on Sunday, an S breakfast, like an easy breakfast casserole or something like that. And then I will portion them both, freeze half of the portions, and then I can alternate with S and E breakfast. This is just for me, but I have done it for my whole family before, throughout the week. That makes it so much easier to stay on plan. And I don't enjoy the feeling of waking up in the morning and thinking, okay, I have to make something, I have to come up with something, I have to figure something out. If I have those things ready to go, it's so much easier to stay on plan with very little time and effort and energy. So just doing that on the weekend is not really a big deal because it's, one thing at a time, just one morning at a time, and it kind of takes care of that. But besides that, the easiest way to make fully finished meals in your freezer is to just double. And doubling is something that I've used to fill my freezer over and over again. That casserole that I mentioned, if I were making the quinoa that was unrelated to use for another meal as a component, I could also double that casserole and freeze the second portion to thaw and eat later. I do that with chilies, I do that with soups, stews, lots of things like that. Just double and freeze the second half. It's hardly any more effort, and I've got an entire meal ready to grab later. So this might sound like lazy meal prep. I don't like to use the word lazy, but it really is the easiest way to get things stocked up and ready to grab without putting a lot of time or energy into it, so you can direct your time and energy to other things. So prepping components ahead of time, there are some really good benefits to that. For some of us, we may not have time for that either. And you might be listening to me thinking, okay, I don't have time to make even one meal to double. I don't have time to, bake chicken breasts, which is something else I do. I'll just put them without seasoning on a baking sheet, cook them all, shred them, freeze them. That's a super simple thing to do while dinner's cooking, but maybe you don't have time for that. And I've certainly had many seasons where I didn't have time for that either. So when you don't, it's okay to buy things. It's okay to get a rotisserie chicken and shred the dark meat and shred the white meat and freeze it separately so that you've got your white meat for your E and FP meals and your dark meat for your S meals. That is a great way to get going on your freezer stash without spending a ton of time. You can buy pre-cooked frozen quinoa and brown rice in the freezer section at your store. You can buy lots of components that are ready to grab, and even look for things that just save you a lot of time. Like you could buy diced frozen onion from the freezer section. It's the last time I checked, it was under $1. That saves time when you're putting your meal together. So when it's time to make your meal, if you had pre-cooked frozen chicken and you had diced onion and you had frozen rice, you could make a really good chicken double fried rice recipe from THM. You could make a lot of things much faster if you have those components ready to go. But if you also double and freeze, then you've got a great start for, those busy nights when you're just like, I don't have time to cook, I need something. Those complete meals are also a game changer. Now, if you don't have time for any of that, if you're in my boot camp, you get all the tools to put THM meals together in 5 to 10 minutes with very little, very, very little prep time. So if you're in boot camp, definitely we'll be getting into that. We've already covered the quick and easy meal options and things like that. But that is something that I teach in boot camp every time because I think it's a necessary skill for staying on plan at THM. Having those meals at your fingertips that are delicious, that are fast. Everybody loves the Hawaiian chicken recipe I share in boot camp because it's super fast, super delicious, family friendly, but it's so fast. And that's what you need to be able to do to stay on plan with THM, is have those quick and easy options. Your freezer can definitely help you with that. Okay, here's the actual checklist. So one is make a meal plan, and I put a template in here for you that you can fill out, and it's just a 5-day meal plan that you can fill out the way you like. It looks like this, and make your meal plan. So that's step one if you're going to meal prep. Make your meal plan, then check your pantry and fridge and look for what you already have and figure out what you need to buy. There's also a grocery list in here to make it a little bit easier on you. I have a grocery list with some items already put on there for you. Create a shopping list, go shopping. And my favorite way to shop, honestly, is I like getting steps in at the store to stay mobile and active. But I will, at my Kroger store, I don't know if you guys have this where you are, they will give you a 4 times the points if you clip the coupon and shop on Friday. So I put in my online order Thursday, pick it up on Friday, and I get 4 times the fuel points, and someone's doing all my shopping for me. So that also saves a lot of time. It also helps me come in under budget because that way I have a set budget and I can make sure to stay under the budget. But shopping your pantry, fridge, freezer, that will help too when you're about to go shopping. So you go shopping before you cook, clean the kitchen. This is key. Make sure your dishwasher is not already full. Make sure there's not stuff all over your counters. That will help a lot. And have your storage containers on standby. So even if you're not doing a full prep session, making sure that some of those things are done can make it a little bit easier for you when you're putting together your meal components like we talked about, or if you're putting together full freezer meals and doing it that way. Either way is fine. Whatever method works best for you is the one that you need to do. And that's another thing in boot camp we cover. Like, the plan has to work for you. It has to work for your lifestyle. So that's my job, is to teach you how to make Trim Healthy Mama work in your lifestyle so that you're reaching for those THM foods and they become your default and it becomes second nature to eat on plan. And there's always this amazing aha moment, this like incredible, oh my gosh, Jen, I've been on plan for 4 weeks straight. I'm getting these results and it feels easy now. And that's where I think the magic happens. So we want to make it feel easy. And that even applies to meal prep. We want it to be simple. So when you're putting things together, just have an awareness. If you try a 3-hour freezer cooking session and it doesn't work for you and you're like, that was so much, my back hurts, I'm exhausted. That's my own personal experience with those long freezer sessions. Don't do them again if you don't want to. Start just doubling and freezing or making those components every night. Make them a couple times a week. Make your simple breakfast on the weekends. I also carve out time to make a THM dessert, sometimes once a week when I have time for it, sometimes once a month. Honestly, that is decided not by my schedule, but by how tempted I am by foods around me. When I'm feeling more tempted, I will need an on-plan dessert. So I will make sure that I have the time to get an on-plan dessert made. But if I'm short on time, I always have those store-bought items in my fridge and freezer too. I always have Rebel ice cream. I really cut back on my heavy S's months ago to do it with a client who had a little bit of a stubborn weight issue, and I told her I'd do it with her, so we cut back on the heavy S's. And so I haven't touched the Rebel ice cream that's been in my freezer for like 8 months, but I have it there. So if everybody else is having something that's delicious and amazing, I also can have something that's delicious and amazing, but it's truly a special treat. I always have dark chocolate in my pantry. So having those things takes the pressure off when it comes to making a dessert. Although I try to make the dessert, if I can't get to it, I can't get to it. And I want you to keep that in mind when we're talking about meal prep too. Those store-bought items I mentioned earlier, and you can definitely go back and rewatch if you missed that part. Those store-bought items can pinch hit for you if you don't have time. And so your priority needs to be, I'm putting my meal prep on the calendar this week. If I don't get to it, I'm going to have these backup items on my grocery store list so that I can be sure to stay on plan and feel like it's easy because I've got these other things that are ready to go that were prepped for me. Okay. Now, we also have a food swaps section in this guide. It's a big guide for free. I'm aware of that. Sometimes these things go overboard a little bit, but I want to help. So this is a food swaps guide. It just gives you some things that you can use on plan for whatever fuel type you're using, and things that you can use if you're used to using off-plan ingredients. This might be helpful. If you are already super familiar with the plan, you could skip printing this and just scan it on your computer, look through it if you want to. But my favorite part of this meal prep checklist is these meal prep recipes, and they're mix and match. So I'll explain what that means. I have a bunch of recipes in here for you. And like this chicken burrito bowl, it's an E-friendly recipe, and you can swap in other proteins, you can swap in other veggies, you can swap in other carbs. You can, of course you're going to want to stick to whatever fuel type you choose. So this is an E recipe. So if you were going to add cheese or guacamole to make it into a crossover, that's okay. Or you could make it into an S by taking out the rice and putting in some cauliflower rice instead. You have options. So that's what you kind of need to be aware of. You want to make sure that you're sticking to the fuel type that you pick and making sure that you're choosing the fat options to make it into a different fuel type. We've got baked salmon and asparagus here. You can swap in a different protein, different veggies. You can add different carbs to make it a crossover. Shrimp and avocado salad. You can add quinoa or brown rice for a crossover, cauliflower rice or miracle rice for an S. I love miracle rice. I'm a big fan of that. Beef and broccoli. So basically whatever meat you have prepped and ready to go, you could swap it into these recipes and still have a delicious meal. but it's just depending on what fuel type you want. And there's different, again, if you are looking for, I've got rice replacements here to keep this in S mode. If you wanted to make it into a crossover, you could put in brown rice or quinoa. You have options. So these recipes are here to give you some ideas and to make it simpler for you. But as you're meal prepping, the one thing I want you to pay close attention to, if you set a schedule for yourself to meal prep and you decide this is the day that I'm going to do this thing, and you feel like it's just not working, change it. That's the key for so many people with THM, that we get into our heads that there's this one thing that I need to do that's going to work. It's not a, it's not a do or die situation. It's that if you feel like the level of prep you're putting in, the amount of time you're cooking, any of that's not working, don't do it anymore. Change it. And that's what we cover in boot camp in depth, because THM is so doable and can be so easy if you focus on the habits that actually move the needle for you, not necessarily things like 4 hours in the kitchen doing a giant meal prep session. So I hope that makes sense. And I did see, hi Heather, she asked, what is Miracle Rice? Okay, so Miracle Rice is the shirataki noodles. It's the same thing as, they have Miracle noodles. They're clear, glass looking rice and noodle packages that are basically a I believe it's like yam root made into noodles, but it's an FP. It's been on plan with THM since the very beginning. And I love using the rice. It's all in the refrigerated section at the grocery store. I love using the rice because it kind of soaks up flavor. Like when I make my chicken divan casserole, I always used to make it with white rice. That was how I grew up eating it. That was how my family used to have it. And when I made a THM friendly version, I missed the rice so much because I wanted to have that white rice with it. At the time I was in weight loss mode, so I didn't want to have brown rice and make it a crossover. So the Miracle Rice is basically shaped like rice, but they're kind of, they're just like tiny little grains of these yam noodle sections, and it just absorbs and soaks it up really well. So it's great with casseroles, great in like bowls, things like that. So that's what Miracle Rice is. I recommend it. But thank you so much for joining me today. We will be going live again in this Facebook group very soon with a bunch more tips for you. I have a whole holiday checklist that I'm going to be sharing soon to help you stay on plan throughout the holiday season and to be actually making progress so you don't get to January 1st feeling like you're behind. We want to be moving forward. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.